So, doctor, going back to the endothelial cells and the stomach lining, you said that the stomach lining is important to keep the good stuff in and absorb, helping the absorption of nutrients and keep the bad stuff out, pathogens, toxins, things like that. I've also read that the same thing is true of what's called the blood-brain barrier. Can you tell us what that is, and what is the role of butyric acid in regards to strengthening that?
Yeah, great question. And the answer is yes. That's the simple answer. But the connection is the same proteins that bind together those endothelial cells in the digestive system, in your intestines and the lining there, actually are responsible for helping form the blood-brain barrier as well. The blood-brain barrier is responsible for protecting our brains and not allowing the proteins, the mRNA, the rRNA, those different signal molecules that happen in between the rest of our cells from corrupting the signal that goes on inside of our brain. And so our brain is able to filter out, if you will, the things that it wants to receive and not necessarily see the things that it doesn't want to receive. And so that's a crucial element. And we often have patients who come in with brain fog, can't think clearly, a lot of different things, and we can tie that back to a leaky blood-brain barrier and the amount of information and confusion that that brain is experiencing.
So strengthening that blood-brain barrier seems like that's a good thing to do.
Yeah, that's a great thing to do.
You mentioned earlier about the role of the gut in creating neurotransmitters. What exactly are neurotransmitters, and why is it so important?
Neurotransmitters. So let me back up again just a little bit, if you will. And the nerves inside of our bodies, they don't actually connect directly. So it's not a direct transmission of energy from one nerve to the next. What happens is there's a small gap, and there's multiple small gaps in between these nerve connections. They're called synapses. And the way that we get energy from nerve A, if you will, to nerve B is there is a chemical connection that goes across. That can be GABA, dopamine, serotonin, epinephrine, norepinephrine. Those are your neurotransmitters. And so depending upon the signal that is sent, a combination of neurotransmitters can be sent across, and then that relays the information to this nerve, and it can be carried downstream a little bit. And this connection happens very, very quickly. We know how quickly a signal can get from your brain to your foot and when you step on it, or when you want to move, or from your foot to your brain when you step on a nail.
So you mentioned some neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin. Typically we think of those as being very important for mood, for our ability to sleep, and do things like that. Are you telling me that that actually starts in the gut, and that if we take care of our gut and increase the health of the microbiome, we're affecting our brain health, our mood, and other problems like that?
Yes, and the answer to that is absolutely. Not just yes, absolutely. It's a critical component, and it's a critical link that has been made by science in just the last little bit. And it's drawing that connection and making that connection complete and whole that really empowers overall health.
So you mentioned brain fog. I know there's been a lot of debate over the years as to whether after a certain age, new brain cells can be developed. Can they? And if so, what is butyric acid's role in that, if any?
Well, first, we've heard that your body can't develop new cartilage, it can't repair your joints. And we, again, cut those out or drug until you have to get them cut out. And we're finding through just some very basic vitamin, mineral, and nutrient injections, oxygen injections, we can actually kickstart that healing process again. We've heard the same thing about our brains, that the brains won't necessarily regrow or won't remap or whatever. And yet there's this entire branch of neurology called neuroplasticity where they prove that that's the case. That our brain is ever changing, that it can adapt, that it can continue to grow even after a certain time frame. So the question is, why won't it? And again, if you look foundationally, the information that put our brains together, our DNA, where did it go? It's still there. So again, why aren't we tapping into that? Why aren't we utilizing that? And certainly there's bigger brains than mine that will say this and that, and we're not having certain components. But the reality is we see with neuroplasticity the amazing things that the brain can do. And so if you fuel the brain, if you give the brain the things that it needs, be that the vitamins, minerals, building blocks, and so forth, if you protect the brain, so blocking the blood-brain barrier and making it so that the brain can heal and work in confinement, if you get rid of infections, if you relieve toxins, if you get those blocks, if you will, to the brain healing, then now we can start to explore some of the possibilities. Pulse electrical magnetic fields, a lot of different components that we're looking at that will help stimulate brain growth and brain activity. But again, foundationally, you've got to create that link. You've got to have a healthy balance of nutrients, vitamins, minerals, and neurotransmitters, which all starts in the digestive system.